What we've got here is failure to communicate.
Hey, I'm UFC President Dana White, and you're in the ring with Callum McGregor.
To me, the Lions are the number one rankings out there. Those guys are the ones who really do their homework, you know what I mean?
But this fight, I'm telling you, it's a flip of a coin.
We did not tap.
Let's go! Let's go!
Callum McGregor, Nick Eagle-Eye, Don't Tap podcast. Last week, we had a little bit of PFL action, and I know that PFL was a thing that I sort of embraced a little while ago, and I've actually sort of fallen off a bit more recently, but I didn't get to see most of the actual card live. I had to go back and watch the fights. But watching the Kayla Harrison upset live, what was that to you? And I mean, what was the widest the line was at one point? Did it get up to minus 1100? I know it was a little bit tighter than most of her fights, but
the last time I saw it, it was only sitting at about minus 700. I think that her opponent there, though, she was sitting at, after the first round, I think she was sitting at probably close to plus like 1050 or something. So the live odds probably reached that type of hype. But I think this is honestly the best thing, man. I think this is good for the PFL. I've heard a lot of other people talk about this too. And like the PFL just did like a big thing in New York, right? And I just feel like people don't advertise MMA like they should. Like they should have had like Kayla Harrison on like news shows and that type of stuff, and like places that can kind of push their platform a little bit more. And it's like they just did this big thing at MSG, and then they're just gonna kind of walk away with it without doing anything, which I think is kind of unfortunate for their brand. But I think with Kayla Harrison losing, it kind of sets up a fight that they can actually hype. Because in all fairness, it's not like she wins in dominant fashion. And whenever she goes out there, I said nothing's like, it's not very exciting to watch her fight a lot of the time. So I think with this rematch, I think they actually have a marketing play where they could hype it. So I think it's good. And
there's now a blueprint. And then on top of that too, I mean, I think it gives PFL a different layer now, man. It gives it a little bit more legitimacy. Rather than just having someone hulk over the whole organization. Now we have a little bit more, texture to the actual women's division. So I think it's awesome, to be honest. And now the whole big thing is going to be her Rocky story coming back and how she's going to do it. So, all right, let's jump into UFC Fight Night Orlando. Looks like a pretty solid lineup. I've been looking at this one. I mean, I think all of us have been looking at this one for about almost a month now, looking ahead, because there is some pretty solid fights on this card. We will lead off with the main event. We have Stephen Wonderboy Thompson coming up against Kevin Holland. Wonderboy Thompson coming in at 16-6-1. Kevin Holland 23-8-0. Really the one thing that's a little bit crazy is Thompson's been in the UFC forever, and if you look at Kevin Holland, he's just so active that he actually has more fights on his record. So this is definitely an interesting tilt. We have Holland coming in with reach advantage. He pretty much has always a reach advantage on almost everybody. Wonderboy is going to look to close that gap and come in on Holland and stand up, use his explosive karate style. Definitely interested to see how this one plays out. Likely will play out on the feet, maybe with a little bit of grappling, but I want you to take this one away. Currently, the line is sitting at, what do you have the line currently sitting at?
Minus 170 for Holland now and plus 140 on Bet Online. So there's a lot of money coming in on Holland. And honestly, man, I love it because I'm heavy on the Thompson side on this one. I think that if this fight primarily takes place on the feet, which we all expect it to, I think he's just the better striker. This is in Orlando, so therefore we're going back to the bigger cage again because they obviously don't travel with the Apex cage. I think that heavily favors Thompson in this one. And realistically, if you look at Holland, like I understand like the hype that he gets, but like that one punch KO power comes against guys like Joaquin Buckley who throw really winging shots and stuff like that. Like most of his finishing capability comes on opportunities that are exposed from the other fighters rather than him actually opening up these opportunities. He's not a very technical striker. He's just a long rangy dude that has good counter punching. He is a black belt, and it's a lot of people that think a lot of things that people like to quote, but other than that one submission win over Tim Means, it's not like it's something that's really utilized that often. And as for Thompson, like his takedown defense has held up fairly decently up until his last two fights. Like even if you look at the Tyron Woodley fights, like Woodley was a great wrestler. And Thompson was really able to still drag those fights into the deep water and still win moments in that fight. So I think there's a lot of recency bias going into this one. And as fight week progresses, man, like the line just keeps getting driven in the Holland direction. So if this thing keeps going the way it is, man, and I think Thompson's a fair bet. Also like the overs in this fight, man, because other than getting finished by Pettis,
if you look at the over 2.5 is sitting at -135. I think that's a good spot right there.
yeah,
I think that no matter how it plays out on the feed, even if Holland were to catch Thompson at some point, which is what a lot of people are looking for, I don't think it happens early because Thompson's going to play his outside karate style game. And I'll just jump in here. I think the one thing with Wonderboy is though he is. I don't want to say simple in the approach, but you sort of know what you're going to get with the approach. The approach is high level, right? So he knows how to time his distance and run his range well. But I just don't know when you have someone like Kevin Holland who's going to come on, with an unorthodox style, maybe mix in the wrestling. I think he's going to make that at least a threat enough to mix it in for the striking. So I think Kevin Holland actually is potentially the side here. I think that he has a lot more upsides in this. I get what you're saying with the pedigree of Thompson, but I just think that it just seems like Thompson, I think he's on his way out. I think that's how I sort of see it at this point with his momentum and Holland's momentum. Like I said, I think it's a huge thing in fighting. And with Thompson, I think, he should just go sign with Karate Combat and call it a day. But you are right about the line. And I think as the line gets bigger and wider, we're going to lose some value on that. Because if this does get into a point fighting situation on the feet, and it does go the distance, I mean, who knows? It could go either way. And for me, the one line I do like that I started this with was the -135 over 2.5. I think that's a solid play on this fight. Either side, I see the value in Thompson. Obviously, he's a bet. Whenever you have a bet who, we're not talking about a bet who's like a Sun Sao when we thought a Sun Sao was on his way out. Situations like that. Although maybe that's a bad example because he came out solid in his last fight. But you know what I'm saying? Thompson's still there. He hasn't been clean knocked out by, what was it, just Pettis that he was knocked out by?
Yeah, with that crazy Superman punch.
Yeah, and that was it, right? And it was more of a getting caught off guard situation where you didn't see it coming type thing. So, yeah, I mean, you could definitely see Thompson winning this on the feet, but if Holland makes it a little bit ugly, it's going to be interesting. So over 2.5, -135. I could talk in circles on this fight all day long.
And I do want to say the only thing that does worry me about this fight is if you look at Thompson's past career wins, it's generally over guys he has a reach advantage over or people that are roughly around his same advantage. Holland has a 6-inch reach advantage, right? So in a counter note, like just to tread lightly on it because he will have to overextend himself to close that range.
I think he's going to make it ugly, man. I think he's going to mix it up on the fence. I think he's going to make it ugly as hell and throw elbows in there. That's why I just don't think, I get the idea once it crawls over about, that 180 mark, you've lost value completely, even if you're on the Holland side of things, because the bet's the bet. But yeah, definitely an interesting spot. I don't know if I'm really going to have an official spot in that. The over 2.5, though, is a nice one that we'll take a look at. So next fight in the card, we have Brian Barberena, Bam Bam against Rafael Dos Anjos, cash money. So right now we have Brian Barberena coming in at 18-8-0 against 31-14-0 in Rafael Dos Anjos in the big dog, the vet. Right now, what is he sitting at? He's chalky as hell.
Line's 550.
Yeah, the line's getting absolutely crazy. I think a lot of people might dig for props on this one and get in trouble on this one, but definitely an interesting play. Both guys are southpaw, so I mean that a lot of times you'll see Dos Anjos even go to that switch body kick too. A lot of guys are using that more recently. That's not going to really be openly available when you have another southpaw standing in front of you. So we have a bigger Brian Barberena coming in, but Dos Anjos definitely he's proven that he's still there, man. His wrestling's solid. I know he didn't have the outcome he wanted against Vaziev, but against Moicano, he just dominated him in that fight. Take it away. What's your side on this one? We got Brian Barberena, Rafael Dos Anjos.
Yeah, like obviously I think RDA is going to win, but I don't think there's a real way to touch this fight. Like I think the only way you could probably touch is the over, but then once again, right, like the grappling difference is so big that if RDA gets him down, he could probably lock in a sub. Although it's not something we've seen from him recently, it's just going to be one of those grindy, close fights, and I think -550 is way out. I honestly think RDA will probably take him down and smash him, but I would assume this fight goes all 3 rounds because Brian Barberena, unless you really take it to him, like the guy seems to be durable and he seems to last the test of time. So it's kind of hard to figure out a way to touch this fight, man. But official pick will be RDA.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much the same side as you. I think he's going to dominate the fight, whether it's going to go full rounds and he's just going to be dominating the hell out of Barberena for the most part. If he gets in any trouble on the feet, he can just take it to the ground whenever he wants. I know that's going to be openly available. If you want to get real crazy, I could see an arm triangle situation. He likes to throw those up a lot, and I could just see that happening, mauling Barberena on the ground, and Barberena just sort of turns to one side, arm triangle right there. So if the props were there, I don't know if they will be, but that would be a way to look at it. But anyways,
it's plus 300 right now. We got some props for some of these. Plus 300 for the submission.
All right, next fight on the card, we have Matus Nicolau against Matt Schnell. And if we're looking at this fight, we got Nicolau coming in at 18-3-1, Schnell coming 16-6-0. I mean, the one thing we want to look at in this fight is both guys are they throw what their output is what they take back in, right? So they're pretty well defensively sound. With Nicolau coming in, he's throwing about 3.5 strikes per minute, and absorbing about 3 strikes per minute. And we have Schnell, landing about 4.3 and absorbing 4.4 with possibly, though, a little bit of durability issues. So it's going to be interesting, your approach on this one. Initially, I had an angle on this one, and, although Nicolau's there, I think the line's getting a little bit wide on this one. What's your take on this Matus Nicolau match now?
Yeah, this fight to me just screams violence, man. The way I would handle this fight is the under 2.5, sitting at minus 110. Like, obviously, like the majority of people, like most people are going to be on Matus Nicolau. There's a reason why he's a minus 380. But as we saw with Matt Schnell in his last fight, is you got to take a brick and smash it over this dude's head to actually get him out of there. And somehow he just zombie modes his way into winning some of these fights. So I think at the end of the day, it's either Matus will actually be able to do enough to get him out of there, or he's going to tire himself out and end up getting subbed in the end. So I like Matus. I like him to finish this fight. But my favorite bet for this fight would be the under 2.5 at minus 110.
So under 2.5. minus 110. I have a minus 105 here. So it'll jump up and down a little bit, but yeah, I don't mind that play at all. I mean, I think this is going to be a close fight. If it does go to the cards, we could see it go either way. Nicolau should take the better of him on the feet, but minus 400 does not play for me. I just don't like it. It's just way too wide. I don't think it's accurate. So for me, I'm off it, but I do like your angle. Next fight on the card, we have Tai Tuivasa against Sergey Pavlovich. And this one is, I think, pretty easy to call. I think pretty much everybody's on the same side in this one. Tai Tuivasa has the potential to be able to hang at this highest level, but I don't think that his mentality is going to allow him to do that. And I think that's just going to be his biggest problem. He's going to get in his own way. We have Tai Tuivasa 15-4-0 against Sergey Pavlovich 16-1-0. Pavlovich coming in with some striking, some wrestling. He's a little bit of a fucking monster, to be honest. And so is Tuivasa, but we know what he's going to do. And Tuivasa is going to just be throwing bombs, throwing haymakers, and he's a banger, he calls it himself, and that's the problem. I think if he played a smarter game, he may have a better chance. But you take it away. What's the line currently sitting at for this one?
Right now, you got Sergey sitting at a minus 215 with the return on Tai sitting at a plus 185. Yeah, man, I got a few bets on this myself. Some of them not money line related. I have a buddy of mine in one of my chats. I have a shoey bet on this one because it's with a tie fight, it's kind of the way it has to go. Because I'm big on Sergey, man. Like, this guy's only loss comes to Alistar whenever Alistar was taking that horse medication, man, juice to the friggin' gills. And even that fight, man, like, he got taken down and beat up, but he didn't look too bad. Whenever you look at this guy, man, like, the guy he's got no problem getting hit. Even Derek Lewis was throwing punches at him, not a care in the world. That's a little bit concerning if you're placing money on him. But I don't think Tai has the durability. Like, we've seen Tai get hit and topple over before. And generally, a lot of people are more reserved. And I don't think Tai is going to do very well dealing with the pressure. I think Sergey's just going to push him up against that fence, land big bombs, and get him out of there in the first round.
Yeah, and really, I mean, I don't know if there's, I mean, you can go Pavlovich and go any props with him. Minus 210, I'm even sort of with it, but being a heavyweight fight is probably a stay off for me in that situation. But yeah, man, I think the way the time props are, they're pretty much, there's nothing to touch there. But yeah, I'm with you on that. Pavlovich, I think, is the side, but hey, man, heavyweights, you never know. I'm going to stay off it. Next fight on the card, we have Jack Hermanson coming in against last minute replacement Roman Dolidze. Dolidze actually just coming off of a win a couple weeks ago. So now I guess sort of ready just to jump back in the saddle after a pretty dominant performance, destroying Phil Haas. But let's take a look at the breakdown and the tally of the tape, the tail of the tape story. We have Jack Hermanson 23-7-0, Roman Dolidze 11-1-0. And if you look at this one, I mean, the reach is pretty much the same. Both guys, it's going to be very interesting. Obviously, we know that Hermanson's going to be, I mean, the one thing that we saw was what he did to Chris Curtis on the feet. That was just pretty masterful to actually shut down Chris Curtis altogether. No matter if you sort of hated him for being on his bike a little bit, but he was able to get it done. But going in against Roman Dolidze, who is a powerhouse, who is very scary and can mix in the wrestling and is willing to take your head off because he wants it all right now. He's going out for blood, and he said it. So scary. What's your take on this one, Jack Hermanson, Roman Dolidze, and what's the odds currently sitting at?
Right now, Jack Hermanson's sitting at a minus 192 with the return on Roman Dolidze plus 167. I'm gonna side with the dog on this one, man. May not be a good idea for me to bet against Jack 2 times in a row, but let's see. Because the way I look at this fight's gonna be close. And I think the biggest upsell on this is that Roman definitely has the better takedown accuracy. That being said, it's come against weaker competition, so it's hard to tell how it's going to work out. But I think Roman's going to be able to push him up against the cage, and I think it's going to frustrate Jack a lot. Like, we all see this KO version of Dolidze, but at the end of the day, if you go back to his fights that kind of got him to where he's at, he was very like grindy, slow paced. He really only throws a couple strikes per minute. And as I said, it's because he wants to hold you against the fence, pitter patter, try and shoot for the takedowns. And I feel like that's what he'll be able to do in this fight. I think Jack's probably going to try and keep it a distance. But I think after we get all the cage control going and everything like that, it's going to start to wear in his game plan. And with his new KO ability that Jack's been able to develop, that Roman's been able to develop, I think it can play a big part in this as well. If he starts getting hit with some of those power punches, he's just going to be kind of getting pushed back up. And to talk about the Chris Curtis fight, he was so much bigger than Chris Curtis in that fight. Chris Curtis took that fight on short notice. And as much as we're big Chris Curtis fans, stylistically, it wasn't a good fight. Like, there was never a moment where Curtis was able to figure out that reach advantage. These guys have an even reach advantage. So I think it'll be close. And in a fight where I feel like it's probably going to go to the scorecards and be a very grindy one, I'd rather have a dog money taken in my hand.
Yeah, I think that's a great assessment there, because if it does end up being a grinding wrestling fest with some power shots from both ends, definitely I think the dog side is the way to play this. And it is a little bit of a step up, obviously, for Dolidze, but I think his momentum right now is the way to go. And then on top of that, if he does come in like the monster he's shown in the past 2 fights, I mean, I think it's only a matter of time in 3 rounds before he touches Hermanson. And I think if he does, I think that's all she wrote for the most part. I think he's going to get ragdolled from that moment on. But either or, I think, whether it's a grindy, split decision or whatever way it plays out, or dominance, I think he's the side, and I'm with you completely on this one. When someone has belief in themselves like that, that's scary. And then when they're monsters like that, that's even scarier. Tie them together and put them in the cage in a spotlight situation. I don't know, man. I think we're on the right side in this one. Next fight on the card, we have Eric Anders against Kyle Dawkins. Fall from Grace and Kyle Dawkins, who is a guy that everybody was, looking at, has some decent stand-ups, some slick submissions, against Eric Anders, who has some solid wrestling and really ends up a lot of the time, though, leaning on guys on the cage, to be honest. And he ends up losing split decisions and decisions that some people think that maybe he could have won, but just not active enough, I think. But we shall see. In his last fight, it's a little bit different. He lost to Park what fight was it? I didn't actually tape his last 2 fights. I can't remember if it was against Muniz or Park where he actually started to throw a little bit more.
It was against Park.
Regardless, I will pass it off to you 1 sec. We got Anders coming at 14-7-0. Dawkins 11-3-0. What is the line currently sitting at? And what's your take?
Right now the line is currently sitting at -225 for Kyle Dawkins and at a +190 for Eric Anders. This is another one, man, where I feel like I wouldn't be able to pull the trigger on it, but I think the wrong guy's favored. I think with Kyle Dawkins is we've seen kind of a degress in what we thought he was going to be, and I feel like some people are still kind of following that hype train on him. He's 11-3, and to be honest, he hasn't looked that impressive as of late. But my problem with Eric Anders is he's not a guy that I can trust with my money. He's one of these guys that whenever he shows up, he looks great, and there's certain nights where he just literally looks like he doesn't want to be in there, throws like 4 punches, and just literally looks like he's waiting for that bell to ring in the 3rd round. So I think, honestly, if Eric Anders took this fight seriously, he's a much better striker. And he's got that wrestling background where I don't think Kyle Dawkins will be able to implement his game plan. So I like Eric Anders in this one, man. But as I said, I don't like to bet on guys where I can't trust them to show up.
Yeah, I think I lean Anders as well on the side, but I won't really be touching this with any specific plays or bets. But yeah, I think that you could end up just seeing sort of grinding decision where Anders is leaning on Dawkins. Dawkins is working his submissions game if it does get to the ground, his jits game just to get back to the feet. And we do a rinse and repeat for a little while back and forth with a little bit of striking mixed in the middle. But not true dominance on either end, where we wonder if maybe the strikes from the ground and the submission attacks from the ground are enough, or if the top game was enough, or, I just, for me, it could go either way. And you're completely right with the Anders situation. Sometimes he looks like he's at that level, and sometimes he looks like he's not even there. So I will side with you with Anders on that one, but no official play. Next fight in the card, we have Nico Price against Phil Rowe. Okay, so Nico the Hybrid Price against Phil the Fresh Prince Rowe. 15-5-0 for Price, 9-3-0 for Rowe. Really, I mean, we know what Price can bring to the table, coming off of a victory over Cowboy Oliveira. Jason Witt losing to Rowe in his last fight as well too. So like I said, Price 15-5-0, Rowe 9-3-0. What's the odds currently sitting at?
Right now, it's in Nico Price is -140, but the return on Philip Rowe is a +120.
So we have, Rowe who's going to come in with a striking game plan and a wrestling game plan that's, pretty decent. He's pretty clean with everything, but for the most part, we're going to have chaos on one end and Rowe with some power on the other. Take it away. What's your angle on this one?
I swear this is the last dog I'm going to pick for the next little bit, but I think Rowe wins, man. I think Rowe KOs him. I think whenever you look at Nico Price, like the fights that he wins are against guys that he can kind of just like pressure and put out. Where I think with Rowe, like his career seems to be on like a good projection. Where Nico Price is just the guy that he's kind of in there to be a punching bag. Like the guy needs to take a lot of punches to give one back. And I think that's not a good idea against Philip Rowe. I did good like in his last fight against Jason Witt, man. After the first round, I said he's gonna KO him in the next one because this guy hits with clean power. And I just think Nico Price doesn't have the defensive striking, and he's a defensive liability because he goes in there chin down and he wants every single fight to be exciting. And I think it's just a bad strategy because Philip Rowe doesn't really throw a lot. Not a guy you can really trust to win a decision per se. He doesn't go in there and win minutes, but he lands the bigger strikes in a lot of these fights. And if Nico Price comes in like he has in most of his fights, I think Philip Rowe is going to find his chin.
Yeah, Price is throwing about 5, absorbing almost 6, and Rowe's throwing about just a little over 4 and absorbing just a little under 4. So, and Price is chaos. So, both guys, I think, have the finishing ability. I think that the violence maybe is the bet on this. What's the current line for violence?
The under 2.5 is sitting at -170 right now.
I like that as a play. I think
that's a good play.
I think as much as we can say Nico Price has been a dog that's made it all the way to the end of fights and pulled it out at the end. I think either way, no matter how it plays out, it's going to end in under 2.5. So I think that's a good play. -170, under 2.5. And the other one was it the main event or the co-main event? It was the main event, under 2.5, minus 135.
Yeah.
I think we'll double back on that anyways. Next fight on the card, we have Angela Hill against Emily Ducote. Here's the thing. There's a rule with Angela Hill. Do you know what the rule is?
You bet the split decision.
Emily coming in at 12-6-0. Angela Hill 14-12-0. I mean, it's not a solid record, man. What is your take on this one? This one's going to likely end up on the feet. We're going to have, Emily Ducote coming in, and she landed, in her last fight, 7 strikes per minute and absorbed 4. So she's going to come in with a solid kickboxing prowess and do what she's got to do. What do you think?
Yeah, I like Emily Law in this spot, man. I think you're getting a steal at the minus 125 just because she's the type of fighter where Angela Hill is going to really struggle against. Usually Angela Hill has kind of an advantage in like the speed and the striking, and that's where she makes things close. But in this fight, man, like Emily's such a good kickboxer. Those calf kicks are fucking dangerous. And whenever she starts letting her hands go, it's just something else, man. I know we don't have much experience with her in the UFC to really go off of, but I think this is one of these girls where they're going to kind of skyrocket her. She has a good kickboxing background from what I recall, and I think she's going to be able to, work her way up to the top. We haven't really seen much of what she looks like off her back, but I like this girl a lot, man. There's actually a line on Bet Online that has point spreads. So if anybody uses Bet Online, you can go on there. They do like point spreads like you'd see for like basketball and everything else. And they have Emily Ducote minus 3.5 points at plus 200. And I think that's a fantastic plus money bet because I think she's going to piece up Angela Hill for the majority of this fight. Angela Hill will have her moments, but the way she was throwing kicks in her last fight, I think that strike count number is going to go through the roof.
Bet for her when she is the dog. That's not really much of a dog price for me. So it doesn't really do much for me. So her bet price doesn't really work. Coming in against a girl who's going to probably land a lot more strikes, and Hill will just be game and probably be bloodied up, scar tissue over the eyes, bleeding out, and just marching forward and getting tagged. And I could definitely see that. So I'm with you on that. And may have actually a play on that. What's the decision prop?
It's almost in at plus 100. I wouldn't. For the minus 120 you get on her, or minus 125, just in case she comes out there and hits her with something clean. Angela Hill's getting up there in age. She's like 38. So
what's the split?
I don't have it on Bet Online right now.
Okay, that might be a play though, as far as the tinfoil hat play.
I like it.
Next fight on the card, we have Clay Guida coming in against Scott Holtzman. Guida, the man who's been around since forever. The Carpenter just does not want to go away. 37-19-0 against Scott Holtzman, 14-5-0. Really what we're looking at here is we got a guy in Scott Holtzman who's going to be able to do a lot of what Guida can do, and maybe younger, a little bit more powerful, and definitely an interesting matchup for him. I don't know if it's a good one, that's for sure. But what is the line currently sitting at this? Clay Guida coming in against Scott Holtzman.
Scott right now is sitting at minus 152 with the return on Guida being a plus 132.
And I mean, I think that's sort of fair. I think that on the feet, Holtzman probably has the bigger moments, if not even potentially gets Guida out of there, or at least hits him hard enough to knock him into some scrambly situations. On the ground, the one thing I don't want to underestimate is Guida, though. I think we've been doing that far too much. So definitely an interesting fight. I probably don't have an angle on it, really. I think the Holtzman probably is the side, but Guida's always someone that can scramble and figure things out on the ground. And using his wrestling, his grappling, I don't know, man. What's your angle on this one? Guida, Holtzman, take it away.
I like Holtzman in the spot, man. A huge Clay Guida fan. I was making a joke to one of my buddies earlier that they should have a bet where you can bet on how many times Clay Guida burps throughout the fight. Because if anybody's seen that video of him just belching on the stool every single time. But on a serious note, man, I think Holtzman is he's not really the younger fighter. I think he's like 38 years old. But I just think that he hasn't been in there like Clay Guida has. He's been fighting the higher competition, and I think he'll be able to grind him out. That being said, though, man, this fight's greasy. I think you bet the over, even if it's a little bit juiced. The over 2.5 sitting at minus 230 right now. I don't hate it. Like, I think this fight's gonna be grindy. It's gonna go to a decision probably. Clay Guida isn't really one to get finished per se, especially not against a guy like Holtzman. And that way, if Clay Guida is able to use some defensive wrestling and kind of just pitter patter, he kind of does the whole Kalen Jukagian thing where he screams as he throws his punches and he moves around a lot, and the judges seem to like it. So rather than holding almost a minus 200 ticket in your hand, I think the fight goes the distance is probably the best play.
Sounds good to me. That will be the play, potentially a play for the card. And let's jump into the next fight in the card where we have Michael Johnson against Mark Diakese. Michael Johnson 21-18-0 against Diakese, coming in at 16-5-0. Can Johnson potentially do it? We shall see. What's the line is getting wider and wider. What is the bet sitting at Michael Johnson?
Right now, Diakese sitting at minus 300 with the return on Johnson at a plus 250.
Yeah, I mean, I think the wrinkle that could be the difference in this is if Diakese wants to go to the wrestling or mix it up enough to make it, a more of a dominant, showing. I just think if he stays to the stand-up, you just open the door for Michael Johnson to use that power that he tends to catch guys with and win moments, if not even catch you. So I think Diakese is going to have to go to the wrestling at least enough to mix up the game plan in Johnson's head so he can win on the striking. But we have the younger Diakese coming in. The reach is virtually identical. We have Johnson, the southpaw, and Johnson. Yeah, I mean, he does land more than he absorbs, but doesn't necessarily. I think people say durability issues. He's had some durability issues. He's been knocked down in quite a few of his fights. I was on him in his last fight. He beat Jamie Malarkey. That decision was Malarkey. That's all I got to say about that. But anyways, take it away. What's your angle on this one?
Yeah, I definitely like Mark in this fight, man. Mark's turning into one of these fighters where I can just kind of blindly bet because he's one of these guys that's going in there and doing what he has to do. He has the kickboxing background. That's what he was known for whenever he came in. You look back at that Fiziev fight, man, like that fight was close. Like he looked really good in that, and that fight's obviously aging very well with how high Fiziev's ceiling seems to be right now. I think with Michael Johnson, I agree that he'd be Jamie Malarkey, but his only real win in the last 5 years has been over Alain Patrick. And that guy's 45 years old. It's just not very impressive. And I just think Johnson's time is probably done. He's one of these guys where people will keep him around because he's got good name value. The old people know him. They can show highlight reels time and time again of him KOing Dustin Poirier and Tony Ferguson. But those days are so long gone for this guy. An angle I like is, and I think we're all going to get it one day, is that I like the Casey by sub, man, at plus 500. I think he's going to go to his wrestling. I think that at some point in time, you can tell with his progression that he's getting more comfortable on the ground in his last two fights. And I think this is the time where we finally see him put what he's been training behind the scenes into play.
Yeah, I think if he goes to the wrestling the way he has been in the past couple of fights, I mean, he's right now boasting, 3.68 takedowns average in a fight, but there's way more than that the past couple. The past couple, his average has been way higher. I don't have the full statistic right here right now, but so I think if he's just relentless with the takedowns, he's going to get there. Because we do have a 79% takedown defense in Michael Johnson, but when he does get to his back, that is a little bit of an issue. So maybe the sub prop is a little bit of a tinfoil play, or at least a little left field play, we'll say. But for me, I think that I was initially on a potential dog shot if they stayed on the feet. But with Diakese, he is sort of one of those auto bets and might end up being a play come podcast, pick time officially on Friday. Okay, next fight on the card, we have Darren the Damage Elkins against Jonathan. I just can't say his nickname because I'm Canadian and sort of sacrilegious. Mr. Pierce, who is somebody who I've been a big fan of and backed quite a bit, going in against Chaos and Elkins, but Elkins, who they just don't give a chance to at all, do they? 27-10-0 in Elkins, Pierce 13-4-0. The reach is identical, and really what we're looking at here is going to be the pace of Pierce, man. I know that Elkins can hang. You know that he can go all the way to the end and be in great big wars. But the volume, He's landing almost 6 strikes per minute, absorbing, just under 4. And then his takedowns, he's landing, 7 takedowns in the fight, in a, 58% takedown defense himself. But, those have been opportunistic situations for himself. So I don't know, man. Obviously, we know Pierce is deciding this. What's the line currently sitting at? And what's your take?
Right now, set at minus 450 for Pierce, with Elkins being a plus 350. I don't hate anybody that takes a shot on Darren Elkins, because the one thing that's for sure about Darren Elkins is that he pushes an unrealistic pace. A lot of people are showing concerns over the last fight with Cub Swanson, but I still think Cub Swanson's a good fighter, man. I just think he made that cut down, and people are judging him a lot now because of it. But I still think he's got what it takes. But my thing with Pierce is Pierce tends to slow down. So if he doesn't get Elkins out of there, what's he going to look like going into the second or the third? Because we know with Elkins, he's going to be there in the third round just as live.
I think he'll be good in the second, but yeah, that third round definitely is a potential question mark. You are right.
So that's where things get a little bit dicey, right? And as I said about Elkins, this is going to be a higher paced fight than Pierce is probably used to, because Elkins is in it from the minute it starts. He wants that finish just as bad as you want to finish him. So I like Pierce. I like the under 2.5 right now, sitting at minus 130. I think it's the best play on this. Or a fight doesn't go the distance at minus 160.
That's the play. Yeah, minus 165 I have here on Bodog, but I think that's probably going to be my play on this, because although I am on the Pierce side of this, the line's too wide, and then fishing for anything is just foolish as far as a prop play. So I think that at least as far as a time prop anyways, it's probably the way to go. Definitely with you on that minus 165. But I don't know, man. I think this fight's going to tell us that damage is really damage. Next fight on the card, we have Tracy Cortez against Amanda Hebos. Cortez coming in 10-1-0. Hebos coming in 11-3-0. Both girls really, there's a complementary situation on the ground. We have a wrestler versus a jiu-jitsu practitioner. And on the feet, Cortez, she lands about just under, probably about 3.5 strikes per minute and absorbs about 2.5. And Hebos lands just on, about 4.5 and absorbs just under 3. So if we're looking at it, could this just be a wrestling dominant situation, top heavy game, submission attempts, landing strikes from Cortez, or is Hebos going to be able to attack enough on the ground to get it to the feet and then do what she needs to do on the feet and lands the big shots in Cortez? How do you see this one playing out, and what are the lines currently sitting at?
Well, I like Tracy Cortez, man. The line's sitting currently at minus 109 to minus 111. Like this fight's a complete pick 'em, man. I see a lot of people online really picking Rebaz, and I just don't see it, man. I think with Tracy Cortez, I think her offensive wrestling is so good that it's going to kind of negate like anything that Rebaz has going on. Like she trains and she's the partner of Brian Ortega. And I think having those people close to you is just going to make like leaps and bounds and improvements in her game. So Rebaz has a little bit more hype because she's faced the higher competition. She did, in my opinion, and as most, beat Kaylin Jukagian, one of the top tier of the division. But at the end of the day, man, like I said, I think that offensive wrestling is just going to be something else. Rebaz has been known to kind of gas out later in fights, especially whenever you push the pressure with her. And if she spends the first minute and a half on her back or fighting off takedowns, I think it's just going to progressively get worse for her as it goes. So I'm going to stick with my initial thought. As I said, I saw a lot of people going in on Rebaz and then went back and watched some more tape, but I like what I saw to begin with. So
yeah, I'm with you on this one. I think that the Cortez has that little bit more of a modern wrinkle to her wrestling approach, where she can actually really make it work for MMA and the judges. Being able to actually attack, even attack some subs at times, but just be active. That's the biggest thing. Be active. Landing strikes as well too on the from the top. And I think that Hebos is going to maybe be a little bit more live early, as far as at least being effective off her back. But in time, it's just going to end up being, like you're saying, a smothering affair from Cortez. I think Cortez by decisions to play. What's that line currently sitting at?
Yeah, right now Cortez by decision is +1 or +120.
Okay, we'll take a look maybe. Next fight of the card, we have Natan Levy coming in against Gennaro Valdez. Natan Levy coming in at 7-1-0. Valdez coming in at 10, 1-0. This is going to be a case of, the southpaw and Levy coming in and a lot cleaner on the feet. Obviously submission threat as well too. But if we're looking at Valdez, he's just chaos, man. Absolute chaos in there. And for me, he could end up being what's his line currently sitting at actually? Because that's going to sort of be the telltale thing for me.
Right now he sits at a plus 160.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you look at it and I know that's with his loss against Favola, that's part of it. But if we look, he's landed in his 2 fights 5 strikes per minute and absorbed 12.9. I can't get behind that, and but his chaos does sort of scare me. Watching tape, his chaos does sort of scare me. And I'm not that big on Natan Levy as well, but I'm leaning Natan Levy in this one. I think on the feet, he's going to be able to do what he needs to do, mixing, in the grappling as well too, and be able to work the cage. So I think that Levy is the side, but I will pass this one off to you. I don't have too much of a solid take on this. Take it away. Is it chaos or is it Levy?
I like Valdez, man. I think that pace that he's going to put on Levy is going to wear him down so much.
You're looking for a round 3 prop. That's what you're looking for right now.
Honestly, I'm looking for a round 1 prop. I think that round 1, round 2, because I think equally these guys have dog shit cardio. But I just think with Natan Levy, man, like I was hype on this guy coming into the UFC, and I don't think he looks like anything he looked like on the regional scene. He doesn't look confident in being in there. His striking doesn't look like he did on the regional scene. And he offensively grapples to save himself from not getting punched in the face.
Do you think it's a mental thing, maybe?
Yeah, or I don't know. Maybe he was with some organizations that didn't have as much testing as the UFC does. I don't know. Yeah. His speed, his accuracy, man, like his durability, like it just seems like it's not quite there like it was on the regional scene. So now with Valdez, this guy's a human punching bag, as we saw.
Does he train with Paulo Costa? Is that what you're trying to?
He's got his little special juice,
Oh,
okay. But yeah, I think Valdez all day, man. I think violence in the spot. And I think at the end of the day, regardless, this fight isn't going to a decision. But I think Valdez KOs him, man.
And that's why I'm staying off it, because I was sort of leaning Levy, but I'm just staying away from it.
I could be wrong, man. If Levy gets his wrestling going and he wins 2 out of 3 rounds and Valdez is gassed in the 3rd, it just may be a really greasy, boring fight too. But I think he's
gonna have to make it a boring fight and use a little bit of striking to get in there and do what he needs to do. But will be a stay off for me, and likely, I mean, you can make it one of your plays if you want. You can go Valdez like round 1 and 2 or something like that. Next fight in the card, we have Marcelo Rojo against Francis Marshall, a guy who on the Dana White Contender Series, we thought in week 2 was going to come in, and we thought we were looking at sub props. We were looking at grappling between the 2 guys. We thought it was going to be that, and it was a pretty fun stand-up affair. The one thing that Dana had mentioned about Francis Marshall is the guy's at the level, and I think he definitely is. There is a little bit of holes in the stand-up. Well, the stand-up, he is relentless. He does set up his 1-2 really. It is pretty nice. He keeps his head off the line, just off the line, but he does leave himself open there. But let's get into it. We got Marcelo Rojo, the vet, coming in at 69-0. He's got power, but he's also got a little bit of durability issues against Francis Marshall, 6-0-0. The touted, grappler, wrestler, but a kid who has some pop in his hands and some decent boxing. Is now the favorite, and this is why, for me, I'm going to say right out of the gate, this is going to be a stay off for me, but we're going to call this a prospect watch. I want to see what he does at this level. I want to see what he does against Rojo, because as much as people are shitting on Rojo, I think this is a good little step up in competition for him to see what he can do. So we have Marshall coming in his debut. What is your take on this? Take it away. And what's the odds currently sitting at?
Right now, Marshall's sitting at a minus 138. Or minus 158 with a return on Rojo at a plus 138. I'm with you, man. Like, this is one of these spots where, Francis Marshall looked good on his regional scene tape. And I think this is going to be a really telling fight in the first minute and a half, because Marshall's going to come out and shoot for a double leg. And if he gets it on the ground and Rojo doesn't seem to have an answer for it, then that's going to be the story of this fight. And Marshall probably gets a sub at some point. If he shoots for a takedown and Rojo gets easily up to his feet, then it's a good live betting spot. Because if Marshall really has to push for those takedowns, he's going to gas. He looked gassed in the second round of his fight on, I believe it was the Contender Series. He's just one of these guys that if he doesn't get it done quick and early, his gas tank starts to fall off because he shoots for those takedowns so aggressively. He's a big muscular dude, and he just kind of burns himself out. So that's the only way I'd play it, and that wouldn't be anything official. It just Marshall's my pick. I think he wins by sub. But if I'm there watching the fights and I see Rojo getting back to his feet, I'd probably sprinkle a live bet.
I really do like that sub bet, but at the same time, it's just my head's just sticking with the idea that I want to see what he does. So I think we're
it's a
on
show
the same
me
page with
spot
that.
for sure.
Show me spot, prospect watch. But on the next fight, I think I may have a play, but we shall see. Yasmin Uruguay coming in against Estela Nunes. Uruguay obviously coming in. I don't think it was short notice, but I think the fight the fight got bumped up on the card. That's what it was. It was bumped up to the main card. And what we're looking at is this woman is very solidly well-rounded. Her stand-up game is pretty impeccable. Coming in against Nunes, who has a pretty powerful stand-up game as well too. She's got pop in her hands and some good boxing as well too. But if we're looking at it, the biggest wrinkle in her or defect in her game and Nunes' game is that takedown defense. And I sort of went through Uruguay's Instagram. There's nothing that's really leaning towards the fact that I think she's going to mix in the wrestling, but I think she's going to be able to. I think she's going to be able to mix in a little bit of wrestling as well too. But what's the line currently sitting at this one? I know it's pretty.
It's juiced. Yasmin's sitting at minus 300.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then obviously it'll be a stay off play. I think Uruguay is going to ride this one. To be honest, I think she's going to actually mix in some wrestling in this one, but. This might actually be a great way to start off the card. I think it's going to be a fun fight to watch, but at that line, no thank you. No play, no mas. But you? What are you saying?
Yeah, dude, this fight is so much of a dog or pass fight. Like,
yeah,
I don't know how you would go into somebody's it's her UFC debut, right, for Yasmin?
No, it's now her. She was on the San Diego card, so she was on the prelims, and then she got bumped to the main event.
That's right. Yeah. So I don't know how you would go into this fight, man, like having that sort of confidence in her, like at that type of price tag. Because for some reason I forgot about that Yasmin Lucido fight, but I think with Estela Nunes, man, like I think that people really underestimate her. Like she fought 2 hard fights, and even if you look at her Sam Hughes fight, man, like she didn't look terrible against somebody who completely offensively wrestled her. She didn't look terrible against Ariana Carlosi, whose whole game plan is to offensively wrestle you. So I think this line is so friggin' wide, man. Like it's almost like wide enough where it's making me like want to take a shot at Estela Nunes because her striking's on point, man. I was super excited when she came to the UFC. Like unfortunately,
she has some precision and some power, man. So it definitely is there. I think this is gonna be a fun fight to watch. That's for sure.
And people just talk cardio, but it's like, yeah, she fought 2 strong offensive wrestlers. As a striker, that's obviously going to wear down her cardio. So it's completely dog or pass. I don't know if I'd ever get to the window with betting Estela Nunes. Goes against my belief. But
although there's been some women's fights that have been trending to inside the distance, I think this one does go the distance. Minus 200, maybe a little bit juicy, but I think it really does. I think there's going to be a war that goes to the bell and, we're cheering and goes to the scorecards. And even if it's definitive, we may, it's going to feel like it's at least back and forth all the way to the end.
For everybody, it's Callum McGregor. This is Nicky Glide. Thank you for watching the Don't Tap podcast. And we'll be getting plays out and posted up on the Instagram. Follow us there. Follow us on Spotify. Follow us on YouTube.
To me, the Lions are the number 1 rankings out there. Those guys are the ones who really do their homework. You know what I mean?
But this fight, I'm telling you, it's a flip of a coin.
We did not tap.
Let's go! Let's go!